So we're going to find surface area of cylinders. So when we're talking about surface area of three-dimensional figures, we want to think about what that means. That means the area of all of the surfaces. So in this case, we have a circle on one end and another circle on the other end. And then what would this shape be? So if we have two circles, so we have two circles, and then what would the other part of this be? That would think of a soup can and taking a label off of a soup can. It would be a rectangle. So we have two circles and a rectangle. Surface area is we can use a formula. This is a formula we can use. Or we can draw a net to kind of break it apart. So if we have two circles, let's find the area of a circle first. Pi times radius squared. So in this case, since our radius is 5 centimeters, let's do pi times 5 squared. So let's find the area of pi times 25. That's going to give me an area of 78.5 centimeters squared. Now let's talk about this rectangle that makes up this whole space around the cylinder. It would be a rectangle, like I said, with a soup can label, and the height of my rectangle would be 12, so this would be 12. But what would be this part? What would be this length, or this base, if you want to call it? That's going to be, if you think about it, the distance around this circle. So that's where circumference comes in. That's why we're talking about with the circumference here. Okay? So the circumference is pi times diameter. So let's find pi times 10. Since my radius is 5, my diameter is 10. So we're going to use the circumference of 31.41592, and it keeps going on and on and on. Let's put that in our calculator and leave it in our calculator as the decimal, this decimal that never ends. So keep that whole decimal in there, 31.41592, blah, 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 blah. Keep that in there. And that is this number right here, this circumference up here. So let's just multiply that times 12, because that's my height I'm talking about. So that will give me the area of this rectangle. So I'm finding that circumference times this height. And so that gives me 376.99. Actually, yeah, so 300.76999. So if I take, this is the area of my rectangle, and if I'm going to round it correctly, I'm going to really round it up to 377. So go ahead and round this one to the nearest tenth, which in this case would be 377. And then let's go over here and let's look at my circle. Now remember my circle, remember there's two of them. So this was the area of one. I need to find the area of, let me move up. I need to find the area of two of them. So if I take this times 2, then I'm getting 157. Okay? Because it was 78.5, or yeah, 78.5 plus 78.5. So my area of two circles is 157 plus this 377 area of the rectangle gives me a surface area of the cylinder at 534 centimeters squared. And now remember, area is units squared. So since it's surface area, we have our centimeters squared. Let's look at another. So here's another example. And in this example, I would like to try to use, or would like to show you with using this formula. So in the last one, I drew it out and I thought of it as two circles and a rectangle. This one I'm going to plug into the formula. So my surface area is, let's break apart what this formula is. what is pi times radius squared? Remember, that's area. And since there's two circles, we're doing 2 times pi times my radius is 5 squared plus 2 times pi times my radius is 5 times my height is 12. Why did I do this? Well, I did this because circumference is 2 times pi times radius, or circumference could be pi times diameter, but if you don't know your diameter, then 2 times radius is the same as diameter. So that's how we got that. And then, of course, times the height, because this would be like taking the circumference times the height. That would be like taking base times height, right? So let's keep going. So I could just plug all of this into my calculator, or I could follow order of operations, and I could make sure I'm doing it correctly by doing step by step. So 5 squared is 25, and I can just do this step at the same time if you know what you're doing. So I did that step at the same time as I did that step, just because I'm going to multiply first. Then I'm going to go ahead, and now I'm going to punch the rest of this in my calculator, because when I start using the pi button, I don't want to round my decimals until the very end. So whenever I can, I'm going to punch as much into my calculator as I can. And I could have taken this whole thing and punched it into my calculator, but since I started simplifying it, I'm going to take this now and punch it into my calculator. So when I punch into my calculator, I get 534.1 centimeters squared. And if you recall on the other page, with rounding, because I broke the pieces up, on the other page, if you recall, I got 534 centimeters squared. So it wasn't much of a difference with that 0.1. But when we get to the test or the check that you're going to do next, I do use the formula piece of it. The same cylinders, and I just want to show you the two different ways. So on this one, I want you to pause the video right now, and I want you to find surface area, either using a net and doing it out or using the formula. Okay, so you should have done that, and I will show you what we get. So you tried it first, and I'm going to use 2 times pi times 4 is my radius squared, plus 2 times pi times 4 times, running out of room, 9. So I'm going to plug all that into my calculator, and I get 326.7 feet squared. If you did it where you did the net, let's do that. Let's look at how you did it if you did the net. So that's if you just plugged it in. If you did the net, I have a rectangle of 9 by my circumference. Remember, pi times 8. Since my radius was 4, my diameter is 8. And this gives me an area of 226 2/10. And then I have my circles, and I need to find the area of my circles, pi times 4 squared, which gives me pi times 16. So I want to use that pi button on my calculator. Always use the pi button on your calculator right now. And I get 50.2654, blah, blah, blah. And I'm going to keep that in my calculator and just multiply by 2. Now it'd be safe of this area of the circle to round to the nearest tenth. So I'll take this rounding of the nearest tenth and this rounding of the nearest tenth, and I will put it together. And when I put it together, I get 326.7 feet squared. So we should get the same thing. All right, use your check-in and see how you're doing. And if you need to, replay any parts of this video. Thanks.